do that, and we acknowledge that and appreciate it. So first off, wanted to thank the board for their support of this and getting it to this phase. That's awesome. We're really excited. And we're here today as the Main Street Amy, whom you probably have seen, is here with us, and we're here to basically fulfill our promise of support that we gave originally when we presented this plan. So far, I know the second phase of this master plan seems really far off to you guys because you have a lot of other priorities. But we are serious to our commitment to fundraise, and we held our first effort towards that on October 5th, which Amy helped to lead. And I wanted to let you know we raised $5,200 after expenses. So we feel positive that was a very good first effort, and we got a lot of really positive feedback from the community that attended the event. So we're really excited about that, and we have more fundraising events planning to kind of build on that. One thing that we want to do as part of our plan is to pursue grants and larger donors. One thing that will help us do that is in order to have something tangible on paper, in order to go to these donors and say, this is what we're thinking. So we're here today to see if there is any objection by this board to take a request to City Council to hire a designer to do a plan for us with money after we've raised sufficient funds to cover the cost, of course, which we're not sure we're quite there yet, but we just wanted to kind of float that out there and see if there would be any objection to that. And then also to get the feedback from you, because I think when we did our presentation, you guys were going to go talk about it, but we really haven't gotten our feedback from you as far as your input on the plan and things that we should be thinking about or we can help to move forward or incorporate. So first off, I guess, is there any objection to, once we raise the money, to cover the cost for a plan for our taking it to City Council to do so, and is that an appropriate way to do it?
I'd like to say, I don't know that there's anything wrong with it. We've got another group speaking right after you. They took some of the private money that they raised to hire their own designer and then bring a plan to us. Not saying that's the right way or the wrong way, but there are several ways here. So that as you're going through the fundraising phase, okay, that might be an alternative. I don't know what you'll experience in terms of City Council's willingness to put forth money for a designer. We don't have the dog park funded yet, as far as I know, and so that would include funding for design or hiring somebody.
Right, and to be clear, we're talking about, like, we've already got $5,200 towards this, and we'd be talking about raising more money. We wouldn't go in front of City Council until we knew we could cover all the costs. But the property is city property, and we felt at some point this should go in front of City Council to make sure they were, okay with. We kind of want it to be a group effort, but if there's a different or better way to do it.
I don't know what the way is.
We're all feeling our way.
It's the second way I've heard of.
I think we all, on our board especially, just passing our comprehensive master plan, understand what it means to have something on paper, to be able then to use as a guide to go out. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, we've had numerous conversations about that.
Yeah.
I don't think it would necessarily, unless anybody else has any sort of objection, but I think it would be great once that's finished and then to be back and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. Okay. I'm sure you guys probably have plans for that too. So.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So is there anything at this point you had in your discussions that you wanted to give us or talk to us about as far as feedback or input, things you had determined?
I think one of the biggest things we talked about last time was just understanding the location. It sounds like that's kind of been, directed anyway. So
yeah. And we're really, really excited about where that ended up. So I know a lot of things were discussed and
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
is that a firm thing? I had heard it talked about there, but I hadn't heard anyone concretely say that it's definitely going there. And maybe I missed something. But,
to my again, I don't know who the final word on that, but I have heard through the city side that everybody seems to be on.
I mean, it's tentative in our master plan what we just did, but the master plan is just kind of a guide for us, so we don't necessarily have to go along with that master plan if something needs to be changed. It's just like the additional funding. Our project does not have to be funded either, so it's just a kind of a guide for us to follow for years to come. So if that answers your question.
But it's since I guess it's not real until it's real, is it clear to go ahead and sort of
Right.
work towards that?
And the way you're doing it, by you doing your project and getting a design would be great. And that'll
Okay.
help us kind of clear it, we'll have the water.
That way,
Yeah.
if there is any issue with it, that would probably be revealed once we go through that process.
Right. Mhm.
Okay.
And I think a piece of advice, based on some of the other conversations we've had, is when you talk to a designer, assuming that you get approval from the city council,
Mhm.
is to think about maintenance and what that maintenance plan would look like based on the design, and bringing that back the next time you come and present too.
Okay, thank you for that.
And that kind of help us determine costs too. And like I said, going on with the maintenance.
Yeah, because this is, I think, and again, I think it's a slightly larger piece of property than maybe what we had originally brought up here, and so that's gonna change some of the numbers we recognize, which is, again, one reason why we wanna make sure we've got every tool we can to reach grants and larger donors, to support this.
And I'll just add this too, just from fundraising and things like that. I think too, once you have a clear plan of the design, then also having kind of a clear plan of what the fundraising goal is and like how that's gonna partner with the city. I know that that's helped in the past with, different projects from Davis Park to, Stowe Park equipment, things like that, is saying, this is what our plan was and how is that gonna partner, to kind of get that all together when you bring the other part of it too, the design part. So.
Sure.
And like I said, you're gonna try to go for grants, and the design's really gonna help you in that phase to apply for the grants.
Yeah, I think it's a necessary part, I think, for a lot of the serious grants that are out.
I think something else we discussed too was like not the financing model, but like having like a free dog park versus like one where you go and get like a tag from the city. You know, there are obviously trade-offs, benefits to one way versus the other, but I think that was also something else that we had kind of discussed as a group too.
Did you come down on any one
I don't
side
know
of it?
that we
or-
really
Yeah.
finalized
Yeah, we
anything
didn't
on that,
finalize
we
it.
just kind of had a
It was just an
conversation.
option.
Yeah,
Discussed
but
it.
something else to think about.
I just wanna make sure, the dogs have, with rabies shots and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that if you have a tag, then you kinda know, you know what I mean, so.
And then
Yeah.
theoretically, if you were collecting like a, $5 or $10 fee or whatever to use the park, you could apply that towards the maintenance and kind of make it self-financing.
Something, as you're doing your fundraising, you might continue to poll or get the sense of what people that are raising money for the park, how they feel about it as well. And as we talked about maintenance and things that you mentioned just a minute ago, and it kind of plays into that too, when we know how it's gonna work, how the whole thing's gonna process, that might change the total amount that needs to be raised up or down.
Right.
It might change the expectations of everybody in the community, might change the size of, just because we have a certain amount of space doesn't necessarily mean we use all of it, or you might find there might be other things that come up too that change this in a very different direction that we can't foresee until somebody goes and takes a look at the land or something too, and, can we put a dog park here at all? We think it's a space.
But, yeah,
There's lots of spaces all around the
Yeah.
city, and so.
Yeah, there's still a lot to understand about it, and I know this is on the second phase, but it's a lot to do, and so,
It's an important part of our vision, but it's an unfunded part of the vision.
Right,
And it's a 10-year vision.
right,
So as you're working through, what is a chicken and egg process,
yeah.
and we start to get clearer on it, then
Well, we'll
Thanks, Mike.
certainly come back here with anything that we give you updates, and with anything we find out, and maybe even another, once we get to a certain point, even another survey or something, as you're talking about, to get more public input as far as expectations and how people might respond to a fee-based or, how to handle the licensing, so, all good points.
So Angela, just to make sure we addressed what your question is, I don't believe there's any objection. I mean, if you guys have fundraised the money, you should be able to, to be able to go out and do your design.
Okay.
So I think until it involves, city financing, and obviously when we get to that point, then it would be involved with us doing voting or going to the council and giving them that information.
Okay, all right, well, I appreciate your time, and we're always available should there be any other thoughts or on this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and Monkey Branch Park.
Would we be able to move on to other business while they establish connectivity? To your department update?
Right, good job.
See, they're having a hard time downloading
Oh,
the
I'm
app
sorry,
to
yeah,
be able to
okay.
present
Okay.
Sure.
other
Yeah.
things that don't, okay.
Well, do you wanna do the record? You wanna do it?
Yeah, I'll just give you a little quick update. Some of the things that we're doing right now in Linford Park, we are about finished with installing the play unit there. It'll be an inclusive play unit. We'll probably do that dedication in probably about 2 weeks. They anticipate to be finished by Friday. And the only thing they gotta do now is put out a rubber surface. So we're working on the process of trying to get that done. We already have the basketball goal installed and a water fountain installed there. We also installed a water fountain at Reed Park. And these water fountains are, they cost about $3,500 a unit for the water fountains, but they're commercial, that you got to have for the parks. Other things we're doing too, the pavilion for Stowe Park is on order. That should be in about 5 weeks. It should take about a week and a half to get that installed. What other things I'm doing?
A week from today.
A week
is
from
the
today.
tennis
I never
court
heard of this.
ribbon cutting. Come on now.
Ribbon cutting for the tennis courts on the 28th
That's just.
Are you
at
raising
7
your
o'clock.
hand?
I like girl.
You
We
go
like
ahead.
it.
You go ahead.
Yeah, no, at 7 o'clock next Wednesday, you are all invited to the tennis court ribbon cutting. It's been a project we've been working on for a very long time, and they are complete, finished, they look great. I love going out there and seeing people playing on them. So if you enjoy tennis, pickleball, whatever, just go enjoy that, and I'm excited that that's gonna happen. Talking about fundraising and a lot of community support for that, and so we're really excited about that part. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't resist.
And another thing that we're working on with Miss Street here is on the Go app, we're trying to establish a walking club. We have about 10 different courses on there that you can walk, and the app will actually tell you when to turn, and have pictures and everything. So we're hoping to get that implemented within the next few months. If you download the app right now, we already got one course on there. So we'd like your input on that. I think it'd be great for the city. We see a lot of people walking. What we're gonna try to do is have different steps that you can take. Like if you go 25 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles, and so forth, you get some kind of little prize or something. We're just trying to look at the healthy benefits for the city. I know we do see a lot of people walking, and we think this app would be great for the citizens to use.
No, one of the things that I'm trying to talk with David and Zip too is about making sure that as a board that we talk a lot about maintenance. You know, we're obviously talking about new parks, adding things. So maintenance is definitely a big subject for this. The council has continued to increase the maintenance budget for Parks and Rec, which is needed, very much needed. In fact, it could be doubled again, and you could still use that. So one of the things that I've talked to David in length about is coming just to really educate us about really what it takes. You know, like a water fountain costs $3,500. You know, putting new, ground cover for playgrounds is very expensive. It lasts so long. So I think it's just important that way when we're out, we can also educate people that when things come up, or whether it's playground equipment, painting a soccer field for a season, just understanding what that budget means. And so that's something that's been important to me, and so hopefully at our next meeting, David will be able to, and Zip as well, be able to talk about that. Just kind of let us know, like, what it really means, especially when we talk about adding new parks. What does that mean to that budget, and how is that money gonna be dispersed each year? So. Okay.
It cost us $400.
Because we've already seen wildlife.
What's your uncle?
That's his on God.
All right, thanks for helping with the IT. This is a really high-tech system. It's a little more involved than just plugging a USB in. My name is Will Washam. I'm the Trails Committee Chairman from the Tar Heel Trailblazers. Thank you to the ladies and gentlemen on the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee for having us here tonight to present on the Rocky Branch Park Trail Enhancement Project. Real quick, I'd like to introduce the project team members that are here this evening. From the Belmont community, we've got David Baker, Hans Kaufman, Sarah Kaufman, Bruce Euler, who is the trail coordinator for the Tar Heel Trailblazers at Rocky Branch Park. At each of our trail systems, we have a trail coordinator that's kind of a point person working with the town and helping to guide new trail construction and also work on stewardship and maintenance projects. I believe we've got the Trailblazers president, Brian Hall, here as well. And we've also got some community members that weren't able to be here tonight. Our consultant on the project to help us put together this trail enhancement plan was Community Trail Design. Craig Brixer is the principal for CTD. They're based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Craig has worked on projects all over the country. He formerly was working for the International Mountain Bike Association as one of their trail builders and trail education specialist, and they're the foremost entity for mountain bike trail development in the world. He just got back from a trip to Switzerland doing some trail work over there for their tourism development folks. A quick background on the Trailblazers. We're an organization that was founded in 1990. We're a nonprofit that is dedicated to advocating for mountain biking, building trails, and stewarding mountain bike trails. Our mission statement is to provide the community the best opportunities to enjoy mountain biking. We've been doing that for almost 30 years now. And along those 30 years, mountain biking has certainly changed and grown. And the meaning of our mission statement has changed and grown along with it. Back in 1990, providing the best opportunities for mountain biking was simply building some mountain bike trails. There weren't any publicly accessible areas to mountain bike back then, which is really what led to the formation of our organization. Over the past 30 years, we've been fortunate to work with local governments, county governments, state parks, and the National Forest Service to develop almost 200 miles of multi-use natural surface trail for mountain biking and hiking in the greater Charlotte metro area. Now that we've got trails to ride, providing the best opportunities for mountain biking has taken on a little bit of a different meaning. The sport is available now to a wide range of folks that are enjoying mountain biking, and trails, as you all know, is one of the highest priorities for community members when they want to see amenities within their towns to enhance their qualities of life. So at this point, we're reevaluating trail systems with all that we now know. The state of the practice for trail building and providing mountain bike experiences has evolved. And so we still want to provide those best opportunities for mountain biking. And here in the Belmont community, we have folks come forward that wanted to work on Rocky Branch Park and see what we can do to take it to the next level. And that's really why we're here tonight. And so I'll pass it off to Dave Baker to talk about the project and the process we went through to develop this plan.
Thanks, Will. I didn't think I'd be sweating so early in this presentation. Getting the presentation up here. I just want to, I guess, start out and give you a little project background. So in December 2018, this project kind of got kicked off with a donation from a private citizen for $25,000. It was made out to the Tar Heel Trailblazers, and it was dedicated to Rocky Branch Park. So the executive board for Tar Heel Trailblazers got together and kind of decided the best way to go about that would be to hire a professional trail developer to first do an existing conditions assessment of the park and also come up with a trail enhancement plan for the park to know where we should put that money. So in April 2019, Tar Heel Trailblazers contracted with Community Trail Design, like Will said, and in May 2019, they kind of kicked off the project by doing data collection out at the park. In June, or actually in May 2019, you guys may remember we came before the board and kind of did an introductory presentation of the project to you guys and what mountain biking can do for the community, a unique, awesome trail system. And then in June 2019, Community Trail Design really got kicked off on doing the existing conditions assessment, putting together trail enhancement plans. And in July 2019, the project team got together. We had a design charrette and kind of looked at some options for the park and talked about, there were some community members there as well that ride the trail system and just talk about what we wanted to see with the enhancements. And also in July and August, we put out an online survey. Some of you guys may have participated. We got over 300 responses, so it was awesome. Kind of telling us some data about RVP and what people wanted to see out there. And then in 2019, August 2019, we got the draft report delivered from Community Trail Design to Tar Heel Trailblazers to review. And just a little history, September, I think it was 16th, we did a presentation to the executive board for the Tar Heel Trailblazers and presented the plan to their board, and they gave us unanimous support and approval to go ahead with the process and presenting it to the city. And, sorry about that.
That's right.
And in the end of September, I think it was September 30th, we had a community meeting. I think we invited all you guys, and some of you guys came. And just to present this project to the community and kind of get their feedback. We had a great question and answer. I thought it went really well. And then we're here tonight. So tonight's presentation is to present to you guys the results of the existing conditions assessment, the recommended trail enhancement plan for the park, and our goal is to really hope that we gain your support, and we hope that you can recommend the City Council to approve the RVP Trail Enhancement Project as an addendum to the overall Parks and Rec Master Plan. All right. So when the project team kicked off, we got together and we developed a mission statement. So it's to enhance the park and its existing trail system in order to provide a safe, sustainable, fun, and marketable outdoor experience for Belmont residents and visitors alike. So we also came up with kind of some goals that will help guide us to achieve this mission statement. So one of the goals was to enhance the park so that we could, so that it could be enjoyed by a wider range of users, such as walkers, trail runners, and mountain bikers of all skill levels. We also wanted a wider range of trail difficulty to allow for progressive mountain biking skill development out there at the park. We wanted a unique trail system so that we could attract visitors to Belmont. And we wanted the park to be able to connect visitors and residents to downtown Belmont so they can they can enjoy the charm and boost the patronage of local businesses in downtown Belmont. And lastly, we wanted to provide a venue for cycling events, so competitive mountain biking races, recreational group rides, demonstrations, and instructional skills clinics. All right, to give you just a little more history, we'll go back a couple years. In 2018, Belmont adopted a new comprehensive land use plan. So in this plan, or as a document, you guys probably know this, but it's a blueprint for Belmont over the next 20 years. So in this document, the city laid out several goals and guiding principles to provide framework for developing this plan. And we think it's really important to note that the RVP Trail Enhancement Project aligns with several of these goals highlighted on this slide. So land use, economy, mobility, community character, parks and recreation, environment, economic vitality, community character, access and connectivity, and outdoor recreation. So now I'm going to hand it off to Hans Doffman to talk to you a little bit about the existing conditions assessment.
All right, so this is going to be a super brief park orientation for those of us that are not dedicated to Parks and Rec. So we're just going to talk about a little bit of the history of the park, where the park is for those that maybe aren't familiar, a little bit of orientation of the parcels that make up the park and their ownership, and the existing access. So history of the park, it was established in 2013 with an initial segment of trail in the north parcel built by the Piedmont Area Single Track Alliance. Shortly thereafter, a memorandum of understanding was created between the city of Belmont and the Tar Heel Trailblazers for ongoing maintenance of the trail system and continuing trail development. So what we're looking at right now is 6.3 miles mapped on the trail kiosk, a parking lot, which you can see there on the map, a changing room, a map kiosk, and a water supply. There's a water fountain and a hose bib There's no restroom on the park property, but there is a porta-john for trail users to use. The location of the park is at the intersection of Sacco and Woodrow. So Woodrow Street basically dead ends into the primary gateway of the park. The park is, still this one. The park is 4 parcels, as labeled here, A, B, C, D, and E, or A, B, C, and D. Parcel A is I've got these labeled wrong. Parcel D is the parking lot. That's the whole parcel. It's a gravel parking lot. Parcel C, owned by the city of Belmont, is a sanitary sewer easement. So that's currently the primary gateway to the park. It's wide open sky and is the easement for the sanitary sewer. Parcel A, biggest parcel, most diverse in terms of topography, vegetation, has the best tree canopy in the park, the best opportunity for good in the woods trail as you would think of it. This was also where the original trail system was built. Parcel A abuts with Reed Park up in the northeast corner there. Parcel B is privately owned. We have a memorandum of understanding between the city and that landowner on a rolling 2-year agreement that automatically renews. This parcel has been heavily deforested for timber, so it's currently in 2nd and 3rd growth, mostly scrub, open sky, but does abut with the Stuart Kramer High School property in the bottom left corner there. As Dave noted, there was an existing conditions assessment performed. The Tar Heel Trailblazers engaged with community trail design, and as part of that existing conditions assessment, there were some items that were identified related to trail construction practices that Will's going to cover in a little bit, but also the user experience. So some of those elements that were identified related to the user experience are primarily related to wayfinding. So navigation for a new user and the amount of density of trail within the property. So we're roughly overbuilt by about a mile or so of trail, of what trail is open today versus the acreage that we have. So if you say the guideline is roughly a mile of trail per acre, we should be about 4 miles. We've got 6.3 miles of map trail. We have a little bit less of usable trail right now because the existing conditions assessment did find that some of the trail fell outside the boundaries of the park. So reroutes were created to keep the user in the park if they choose to stay in the park, but those unfortunately compounded the wayfinding issues that do exist in the park for a new user today. The other point I wanted to make about wayfinding was because of the trail density, the wayfinding can continue to deteriorate because of the trail density. So because multiple segments of the trail are visible all at the same time for a user, bootleg shortcuts develop, particularly hikers that can see where they want to go and the trail is there, and they create shortcuts, which makes wayfinding more difficult. So currently we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 intersections or diversions that make the user experience a little bit difficult for a new user to the trail. Lastly, I want to turn it back over to Will to talk a little bit more about some of the findings from the conditions assessment.
Thanks, Hans. And I really want to kind of set the next part of the presentation up, which is the presentation of the completed concept plan. And so here are some pictures of existing conditions out on the trails at the park. And one of the main takeaways from the trail assessment is that the trail experience that you have within the existing 6 miles is pretty homogeneous. There's not much difference between trails that a beginner might get on to trails that an advanced rider might get on. So there's a lot of kind of low impact development trail and a lot of trail that was hand built and is experiencing some issues. one thing, without going into a lot of details on trail building, which we tend to do, we're all kind of nerds about trail building. But I did want to pull this map up, and what you see, these lines in red that I'll highlight in a segment, those are sections of trail that actually are steeper than what we generally do by today's trail building standards. There's a couple problems that cause. One, sustainability issues. They're just harder to maintain because water tends to want to go down those segments of trail rather than shed off. But then also, they're harder to traverse for varying levels of riders. And as you can see, I just highlighted all those red sections. It's not like there's just a couple segments that we could reroute and create a new trail user experience. There's segments all around the park, and so what you'll see when John runs through the concept, it's really a complete reorganization of the trail system out here. That's what Craig came to the conclusion of when he put the concept together. So instead of seeing the trail lines go straight up and down the contours like these segments in red are, you'll see a lot more swooping trail following the contours of the property. Now I'll pass it to John to talk about the recommendations.
Thank you, Will. Hi guys, I'm Jonathan Wilson. I am better known as Emily Wilson's husband in most circles, but I'm the father of two beautiful boys. I'm an avid mountain biker. I've been a Belmont resident for 11 years. I'm a Tar Heel trailblazer, and I'm here because I'm super passionate about outdoor lifestyles and trails and the impact that they can have on a community. I've seen firsthand how this project aligns with the Parks and Recreation Department's identified goals, and how it can meet some of the connectivity needs, meet the needs of the Charlotte region in terms of our trail mix, in terms of the total scope of what the Tar Heel Trailblazers have to offer. And then also how it dovetails into the Gaston outside movement. So I have the good fortune of talking about some ways that we can really enhance the park and make it just super rad. And maybe even get you out into the woods. I'm going to set up a couple use cases rather than kind of just rolling through these slides. And I think that the Trail Enhancement Project concept is going to improve the park in three ways: through inclusion, quality, and progression. So let's go ahead and imagine with me. Some of you guys have seen the presentation, so you're going to go right back to this moment in time. Let's say you're a parent out for a walk or a jog, and you have your kids in tow, you're pushing your bob stroller, and you want to go on an adventure, or you want to put in a couple extra miles out there. And so basically, at the end of Woodrow Street, your adventure awaits. So there's a golden sunlight dappling the trail, and leaves are rustling in the wind, and the birds are always chirping. You're an RBP. All right, so the use case that for people like that aren't really getting to experience our park is this multi-use access trail that's going to connect back into the Carolina Thread Trail and drop you off at the end of the park. With the construction of this trail corridor, you could go bird watching along the watershed of the South Fork, or continue over to Goat Island. And in the future, along the Carolina Thread Trail, you can connect all the way into McAdenville and beyond, possibly even to George Poston Park. Some folks have identified that navigation is an issue in the park, and those concerns are legit. The brilliance of this concept really is, we're going to take those 60 plus intersections and divergences and turn them into 3. We're doing this by creating trail hubs and zones that will make the park more user friendly. Just follow the spur trails back to the hub and you'll know exactly where you are. Creating this spine trail through the park allows for everyone to be confident navigating the park safely and effectively. This trail allows a corridor for future phase build out, and also is a vital path for emergency personnel to access the park. Here are a few trail specs on the multi-use access trail. It'll be wide and smooth with a stable trail tread. So basically flat walking kind of conditions. It'll be 60 to 72 inches in width with open sight lines and room for passing. It'll be approximately 3/4 of a mile. So this is where our use case changes a little bit here. This is to the budding cross-country rider, the person who's just starting out on mountain bikings, and RVP is a little bit outside of their budget. It's outside of their skill set. So this is our beginner trail. It's designed for cross-country novice mountain bikers. This is where to start when you want to dip your toe into the mountain biking waters. It'll feature wide, smooth, and predictable tread, 36 to 48 inches wide. It'll be minimally rugged and very playful trail. It's going to be approximately 1.2 miles in length and have no obligate technical features, but will include funding for 5 radical features that will also have ways around. Phase 1 costs will include the multi-use access trail, which is the vital link through the Carolina Thread Trail, the trail hub, signage, and construction of the green zone or beginner trail with those 5 radical features. Now we're moving into the blue zone. We're meandering kind of down the multi-use access trail to the blue hub. Now, this is the entrance to the blue zone. Here we'll showcase the character of RVP and really focus on quality trails. Here we'll showcase, this is actually the most beautiful forested parcel of land that we have. We're looking to entice the budding mountain biker and advanced mountain bikers alike. Trail runners, hikers, mountain bikers all really enjoy this same style of trail that's going to be built out here. Being an intermediate zone and one in which we'll emphasize the quality of the professional trail construction, we're going to introduce riders to stone and wood features, rock gardens, stone berms, and intricate turns. This zone will be the crown jewel of mountain biking in our region. This zone will include 1.4 miles of trail on variable tread, 24 to 36 inches wide, with optional lines. The trail will reside entirely within the property boundaries and be built with sustainable, low maintenance costs methodology. There'll be embedded obstacles, higher speeds, in-slope and traditional switchbacks, man-made features, and terrain manipulation to create a unique riding experience. The zone will feature over 700 feet of rock work and 7 technical trail features. All right, as we continue to move down the trail, we finally find ourselves at the Black Hub. Here we're picturing the group of core mountain bikers that have made RVP what it is today, and have helped promote the park. This is the MTB enthusiast who's looking to have a blast on a trail that's not readily available anywhere else in our area. So this is what we're calling the House of Sin. This parcel has been heavily logged, and we have the opportunity to incorporate lines that will fascinate little Groms, these little shredders who are just starting out but still have an appetite to ascend it, and also firing the stoke in the folks that have been mountain biking their whole lives. The character of the Black Zone is one of progression through advanced technical lines. We're going to have about 1.1 miles of highly variable tread, 18 to 36 inches in width, with mandatory lines. There'll be elements of exposure, risk, and playfulness. Man-made rock gardens and technical trail features will abound in this section. Included will be an advanced downhill trail that has smooth and groomed to rough tread, downhill flow trail with steep grades, jumps, berms, drops, and rocks. Constructed with variable materials, included in the cost estimate is 10 technical trail features and 500 feet of rock work. To conclude my portion, I would like you to consider that the Trail Enhancement Project opens RVP up to brand new user groups who aren't currently able to use the park. It showcases RVP's character, Belmont spirit, and allows hikers, runners, and riders of all skill levels a place to progress. I think that if you guys vote for this, it'll help take RVP to the next level. Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna add up for you what John just talked about. Total cost for all 3 zones coming in at about $185,000. We have $19,000 remaining from the initial private donation. And we've been working to identify grants for which this project will be eligible. We have almost $120,000. That this is a prorated approach where we're not seeking the top amount that a grant is available, and we've created kind of a likelihood scenario. How much of the funding, what percentage likelihood could we get for this money? So I feel like this is a conservative estimate for things that we are solidly eligible for. These would then pay out in the next 12 to 18 months. And we know that there's no funding from the city of Belmont for RVP in the current fiscal year, and there's very limited funding for the park in the next 10-year plan. So while the new year starts in July 2020, we will be considering, is there an opportunity for the city to help bridge the gap and where we have some funding and present some amounts there that would help propel this project forward. So we're also looking to exhaust all funding sources to limit, to the extent possible, the cost to the city. And so that's going to be a combination of grants, community fundraising, corporate donations. Some of those things are needed because certain grants require matching funds as well, but our original donation qualifies for that. But we also really want to try and tie the community to the project as well, so engaging them. There's also an opportunity to reduce some of these costs by engaging some volunteer work that, while the intent is to have these professionally designed and built, there is a volunteer base available for helping to support, which is how we got to this position so far. So then, of course, the project schedule would follow the funding that's available. So we're looking at a completion of phase 1, which would rely heavily on funding from the Carolina Thread Trail, as John had just described. So there's conversations with that group now. They have a fall and a spring funding cycle. We're not eligible for the fall cycle until we have the approval of this board and city council to then propel our project as part of their master plan. We think there's time for us to be able to do that and be able to apply for those funds in April, but we're having very encouraging talks with them. They're interested in moving this forward as well. We've also submitted a grant request to Hydro Flask, and the funding selection for that will be communicated by the end of October, so we'll have some idea if we're getting some momentum rolling on the front end. Phase 1, as we described, would offer the most benefit to the greatest number of users immediately, and then that can be used while other phases of the park are being fundraised for and constructed. So we're hopeful then that no city funds would be needed for the construction of phase 1. Phase 2 and phase 3 are where we're seeing maybe the city could help fund the gap, but that's yet to be determined. Again, once we think we've got some momentum, and the funding that we have found and identified so far is even without significant marketing communications to a broader audience. But we have grant availability during these phases that include grants from People for Bikes, Quality Bike Carts, the REI Local Grant that the Tar Heel Trailblazers have been very successful in obtaining in past years, as well as the North Carolina Recreational Trails Grant. So the project would then be bid and constructed through the city of Belmont, and once the proof of funds are available, the city could front the money, and that way each phase would be paid through the city but reimbursed through the grants received either by the Tar Heel Trailblazers or by the city. It depends on the eligibility and the requirements of the grant, who has to receive the funding. But then the bid construction and administration can be supported through the Tar Heel Trailblazers and through the RVP committee. So I'm pass back over to Dave to read some lines.
To wrap it up?
Okay.
So I'd just like to wrap up this presentation tonight by summarizing some of the primary benefits of the Trail Enhancement Project as it's kind of been presented to you guys tonight. So first, inclusion. So the enhancements will allow the park to be enjoyed by a wider range of users, such as walkers, trail runners, and mountain bikers of various skill levels.
Babies.
And babies. Get some babies on some bikes. Progression. The enhancements will provide a wider range of trail difficulty to allow progressive skill development for mountain biking. Intuitive navigation. The multi-use access trail and the series of hub and loop trails will allow easier navigation of the park and a longer, uninterrupted user experience. And finally, connectivity. The multi-use access trail provides future connection to the Carolina Thread Trail at the Stuart Kramer High School property. This would allow a new primary trail connection from the downtown Belmont to downtown Kramerton, with the future goal of being able to travel from downtown Belmont to George Poston Park on almost primarily a series of multi-surface trail systems. Sorry about that. So trails are some of the best low-cost investments for local communities, and the maintenance costs for trail systems are minute compared to other parks and rec facilities. So I think the city of Belmont is kind of in a unique position right now to make all this happen based on this local, recent private donation, dedication from the Tar Heel Trailblazers, and support from the local community. So tonight, we're asking you guys to hopefully vote on this and recommend it to the city council to be approved as an addendum to the Parks and Rec master plan. Thank you, and if you guys have any questions, we take those at this time.
So I have an initial one. When it's ready to move forward,
Sure.
so is there, who does the actual work? Is there like specialty people that come in and you guys direct them, or is it, I just don't know, like, is it, I guess my question is a general contractor that comes in and says, this is all what we need to do, or is it a specialty group that you guys know and hire at that point because they do this all the time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we have right now is the complete concept plan that lays the framework for moving forward in phases trail development. The plan would be to hire a trail contractor to actually do the detailed design, so put the flags in the ground and do the construction per the phasing of the plan. There is a nationally recognized body called the Professional Trail Builders Association where we would put out a project to bid in conjunction with the town, receive some bids back on the project based on the descriptions we have in the plan. And then a contractor would be selected on a competitive bid process. The state of North Carolina actually has the highest density of trail building contractors certified through the Professional Trail Builders Association in the country, based on our natural landscapes and trail opportunities. So we would be working with a professional contractor that would come in and design and build the project. The great thing about working with these contractors is that, you know, we, the Trailblazers and the citizens of Belmont are the clients, and they come in and, you know, based on what we have in the plan and also based on collaboration with the local community, they'll design the trail, and we get to work with them every step of the way, and it's a really gratifying process.
Well, I just keep
Emily
going.
Wilson's. What do you?
John?
John.
Oh,
I could not remember your name. John, phase of the three, that piece of land is owned by the private person, right?
Correct.
The landowner. What if she sells?
If she sells, the city has first right of refusal to purchase the property. It's identified in the master plan, the Woolburn
Right, I know
master
that,
plan,
right.
to like acquire additional park space.
Right.
So ideally, we could do that. She's super amenable to working with the city.
Well, I know her, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, ideally, in the very short run, we're gonna get a longer MOU with the landowner.
Okay.
And then and we're not going to build anything on that. So the reason it's number 3 on the list is because of the tenuous nature of the MOU. And the park can stand on its own with just the 2 hubs. And we think that, given the nature of the project, increasing the user base, it's really gonna create demand for that piece of property to continue to be a part of the city's Parks and Rec department.
And then I have a David question.
All right.
But David, I had asked you this before, so this is
Sure.
really not blindsiding you.
Yeah.
You will have a lot of bikes going down to the Reed area.
Mhm.
I don't know, I know that Mr. Oscar Reed spoke with you.
Yep.
But I don't know if you were able to actually meet him. Kind of Reverend Alexander and stuff like that, they are very protective of that area.
Sure.
So with all of those bikes going down that one-way street, they are pretty vocal.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you were able to talk with the Reed people
Yeah.
about that.
So you and I talked about that at the community meeting,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, the way our vacation schedule is locked up, I went on vacation and came back, and I talked with Oscar last week,
Yeah.
and he wanted me to. He was open to having the conversation. We were going to sit down with him, present the plan, and just kind of talk through their questions and any concerns they might have.
Right.
But he wanted me to contact Reverend Alexander.
It
And
was really hard to get a hold of.
yeah, so I talked to his secretary. She gave me his mobile number, but he was on vacation this weekend. And so I texted him, and he wrote back and said, she told me not to call him directly until he gets back. But I texted him, just let him know, we wanted to talk to him, and he said he would call me when he got back. And I left a message yesterday. We were really hoping we could get with him
Sure.
before tonight, but knowing that you guys, your vote tonight is just a recommendation to city council. I told him we just want to get together before city council
Okay,
and make
good.
sure.
Because I wouldn't want those folks to actually feel blindsided.
Yeah,
Because they've been
Oscar,
there 150 years, you know.
Oscar was,
Oh,
great to talk with
He's a
and, yeah.
super guy.
So I think, I appreciate that recommendation because I think, they're obviously an important part of the community and they're very active, so.
All right. Well, great, thank you.
And I guess
And the last, okay.
I'm
No,
sorry.
no, no.
I was gonna tag on to what Leeanna,
Cut me off.
had
that's
asked,
fine.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Has anybody contacted Gaston County Schools about, parking at Stuart Kramer and then accessing the park from the, that back side?
You wanna take that?
So, yes, but it's all like kind of, so, in terms of this project, we just have to be careful about like scope creep, and just to think about getting too wrangly, right? And so, the ideal scenario would be for the Stuart Kramer cross-country trails, the thread trail, and the multi-use access trail all be a nexus back there kind of in the Stuart Kramer area. They're super amenable to it. They want to, their cross-country trails are in dire need right now. And so that is definitely in the longer term plan, kind of on the periphery of what we want to do, and will dovetail nicely into the project once we get the ball rolling on this project.
We had just to add to that, we had a conversation with Brett at Carolina Thread Trail, and we've also had conversations with Gaston County Schools about this as well, kind of preliminary conversations, and the idea is that we get through these presentations, we get the plan adopted, and then our goal is, we talked yesterday about mid-November to try to get the city, City of Belmont, City of Cramerton, Gaston County Schools, and Carolina Thread Trail all together, because the multi-use trail has to be adopted in the Carolina Thread Trail master plan before we're eligible for grants. So that process has to get kicked off, and that's our basic path forward at this moment.
Yes, John. right?
Yes,
Okay,
and just to kind of add on to that, so the way that the Carolina Thread Trails master plan process works is that it has to be identified by a community to say the community has to support the thread trail connecting through their land, through their Parks and Recreation Department before they'll go forward, because they want a partnership. The thread trail can't just come in and say, we're building trail in your community. So once we identify this as a corridor that we would like to connect to the thread trail will say, hey, we'd like to invest in your community.
And how will that work with that parcel D being privately owned?
They actually work with people on private land all the time, and just as long as there's an MOU in place, it's good to go.
When does the MOU renew next? Just, it was every 2 years. Anybody, are we talking months, a year or two, or?
Has anybody spoke to the person? Yeah, right.
I've reached out and haven't had any direct lines of communication.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah,
Well, I can arrange that.
that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be good. We understand that the city is working with the property owner on another project at this time. And
But she knows nothing about this one.
yeah, I know, we're trying to be sensitive, so we asked
Sure.
Adrian to kind of approach her, and it's kind of all for naught if, we've gotta get the plan approved too, so, but it is kind of the same thing, we would like to have preliminary conversations with her to see what gauge her interest in this plan.
Does the current MOU allow for this level of build on that third phase, where you're looking to do those bigger things and with more complexity and danger, where does the liability fall then? Is it city liability? Is it her liability, the owners? Does the plan cover beefing up insurance? Or, I have no idea what's involved here, but I'm just asking.
Yeah, and again, some of those questions are kind of in the mist right now, so we have to lay those bare, and that's why it's the third phase. And so once we kind of get the longer term, so I don't think we would probably build phase 3. So to answer your specific question, does the MOU cover us building out phase 3?
Or is that a
Yes.
renegotiation or?
No, it's good to go the way it's currently phrased. And we would probably scale back a lot of the work in the dirt on that section. using volunteer labor and amateur-built trails, just so that way, if it did get wiped clean, if it ever did get developed, you know, there's gonna be a loss of time and effort and, you know, enthusiasm there, but at the end of the day, there's no hard capital cost. But if we had a 10-year agreement and we were able to build that and amortize those costs over 10 years, a $60,000 investment, even if it did get sold in 10 years from now, $6,000 a year to have that type of trail in our backyard would be well worth the expense.
But I can't imagine the danger, the potential danger of this new black trail is any higher than what's currently at RVP today.
And there's caveat emptor involved in mountain biking. It's all buyer beware. I mean, we have state parks in DuPont State Forest and national parks in Pisgah and, you know, in Moab in Utah, and all of the stuff out there is much, much more dangerous than anything that we would put in at RVP.
How many, I remember your presentation from a few months ago. I'm wondering how many people are out there biking at RVP right now? Do we have any numbers as to how many bikers are out there? I know we've got a great, you know, representation here tonight, but I'm curious as to how many, you know, where are we moving the dial in terms of how many people in Belmont are we really touching with RVP today? I like some of the things that you're talking about in the presentation to grow that, especially the thread trail. Got a cross-country runner, Stuart Kramer myself, so familiar with how bad the trails are there. And the big trail going through would be good for property values, as we learned through our own efforts with master planning. Trails like that increase property values by about $10,000 for the homes that are near them. So I see a lot of things, but I'm wondering how many people were you touching today and actually getting into the park, and as Zip mentioned earlier, we've got the walking club with, you know, putting apps, giving people apps to walk, you know, mark their trails, maybe gathering a little bit of data for how many people are out there biking. You know, is it 20 people out there every single day and, you know, 400 rides a month or something, or is it a mix of 100 people and there's a couple hardcore people? What are we seeing? What do you guys feel like you're seeing right now, I guess?
We don't have any.
We don't have any
metrics on
buy
that.
that
It would be awesome to do that. I think that we should probably either put in some sort of like, you know, those little road, I don't know, why don't we put a counter, some sort of counting mechanism would be
We
great.
discussed it early on and just, I guess just not out of the necessity of not knowing exactly how to get that installed and funded. And but I will tell you, I think somebody mentioned it to me today, we did have over 300 responses to the online survey. And we shared that with Charlotte mountain bikers on Facebook, both on the city page, and so that was a pretty good response. And what was a little bit shocking about that, you would think people see RVP, it's a mountain biking trail, you would get almost all mountain biking responses. We had, I think it was 18% people say they didn't even know what RVP was, and that they would use the trail if we put this type of variety in there for users.
I'd encourage you guys to, you know, if you're mapping your runners, you know, something, post it to Facebook and start, you know, put it in the group just so that it's out there.
Yeah.
And that might be one way to start getting something a little bit more than anecdotal. It might make it easier for the day when the funding for this needs to go through city council for them to see the numbers, the activity. It might gain you some exposure to the community too, so that people can realize it's there and start using it.
Great, yeah.
That's a great
And there was
idea.
another question I had asked you too. Well, I got you outside that. But
Yeah, I got you.
I was down there.
Yeah.
I've taken an effort, and in fact, I worked on that original trail.
Okay, awesome.
So it was really cool. What about the parking? You can only fit 4 cars or 5 cars, you know, kind of in that the parking lot. Now, I know it's not an issue right now, but you guys really want to have events, which is good and stuff like that. You don't have a signed agreement by the Jeff Booker, which says that you can actually park in the lot.
Sure.
So how would you do that? Now, I know that you actually plan upon having the bikers or the park in downtown Belmont, and you'll have them right over.
Yep.
And when you have so when you have events, that's really is a lot of bikers.
Sure.
But what about the visitors? But that area is kind of a very nice, sort of quiet area, and how would you handle that?
So I think we would like to expand the local parking lot slightly. You know, obviously we don't want spillage. if it did become popular, we wouldn't want spillage out into the roadway parking. I know the community wouldn't want that. Some of the things we talked about are potentially presenting it or marketing it for parking in downtown Belmont, where you can ride over and come back and enjoy shops and bike shop and have a drink. We've talked about the potential for, and this is not in this presentation, but there's that connection with Reed Park. We could have a connection there with improvements to Reed Park later on, where beginners that give you direct access to the beginner trail. There's a playground there. Families could go enjoy the playground. You know, if their kid wanted to go take a lap around the beginner trail. And as far as events, it is our idea. The high school is signed for parking for Carolina Thread Trail right now. And they have a huge parking lot. So on weekends, we could have, if we had an event, like a cycling event, youth cycling league already does an event at RDP, and it is a lot of people that go down there. That would be kind of our idea for the best access. But again, we have to get in those more detailed conversations with the high school. But that would be ideal.
Okay. Right, I think that's where it's like, wouldn't we love to have that problem? But you can't have it until you've got the trail, but we can agree, I think there's some opportunities there. But that's one of the really great pieces about this project, is it's so urban, that it's surrounded by so many residential neighborhoods and has access, even with this plan at different parks, that it's not that difficult to ride your bike half mile, a mile, and either from your home or other parking options.
And we
So
really
it's flexible at the beginning.
Yeah, and we really tried with this plan from our May meeting to take some of the comments and feedback that you guys gave us. I know connectivity was huge, and multi-users was huge. And I think this, like you said, the location is just, it's prime for being downtown Belmont, next to the high school, next to Goat Island and Cramerton.
You even have like maybe Belmont Middle School, Belmont Central, I mean, there's
And with the rail trail coming in up here, I mean, it tees right in, it's just, and it really is an ideal location for the park.
So I have a zip question. Perfect, zip. How do we do an addendum to the master plan? And the ink is not even dry on it yet.
Well, no, the ink is not dry, but it's been approved of the part that we have in, and what you were voting tonight is just to add this addendum onto the existing master plan that's already been approved by City Council.
Well, the thing that we have approved, and correct me if I'm wrong, is of the picnic shelters, right?
And restaurant.
Yeah.
Picnic children,
Reed.
Yeah. Well, no,
No.
Rocky Branch.
Reed.
Now, Reed, no, the Reed is getting the ADD kind of access to the Cuddalower Field, so we don't want to take that away.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the restroom is for Reed Park, because Reed Park really doesn't have a restroom, right?
Right.
So we are not asking for any funding right now.
Oh, no.
So we're just asking for the
No,
plan
that's
to
why I
be
really like
adopted
it.
as a future for RVP.
And so that's my question too, with Sarah and directed to you. So from my understanding of the presentation, phase one is not necessarily having any city funding directly to that, correct? So phase two and phase three could change with that partnership and the city having some funding in that. My question to you, Zip, is do we add this as an addendum and do it as phase two, phase three, because we have that, because we don't have any financial obligation to phase one? Or do you just do it as a group and say, it is this, it's a project approximately 185,000
You need to do it as a group, all three components.
as a group, even though at the end of the day, 185 is not necessarily the most realistic number because the funding has already been done for phase one.
But you still have to include it as a group because that's
Because
gonna
of
be
the
added
actual
to.
park plan.
Right.
Okay.
That's park plan.
All right. And then, everybody on this board knows my next question. Long-term funding. Like, how does that, once, let's say this, goes and everything, what is the maintenance of a trail? Like, what does it cost? What added, is it $20,000 a year that says, yeah, this will keep up so that in 6 years, you're like, oh man, those trails look bad? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the Tar Heel Trailblazers, we currently maintain about 200 miles of trail in the area. all those trail systems have different characteristics. Some are smaller community-based trails like Rocky Branch here in Belmont, and others are larger trail systems like the 30-mile trail system at Lake Norman State Park. We've got over 400 active members of the Dry Hill Trailblazers. Not all of them participate in trail stewardship, but because of that membership, we have a lot of resources at our disposal. We've got 3 separate pieces of machinery. So there's small micro excavators and very small walk-behind skid steers that we use to do heavy maintenance on trails when that's required. And then we also do hand maintenance as well. Bruce can speak to a lot of the activities that have gone on in Belmont for the past years as the trail coordinator out here. I'm the trail coordinator for Lake Norman State Park. We've got 30 miles of trail, and so it's my job to engage the community, train local volunteers, ensure that they have the knowledge to maintain the trails. So that's generally how the Trailblazers maintain all of our 200 miles of trail within all the different municipalities that we work with.
So to answer your question, we're not asking for the city to come out of pocket with any ongoing operating budget for maintenance of the park, because we're planning on taking care of that with volunteer labor and fundraising through the Tar Heel Trailblazers. So the Tar Heel Trailblazers we're not coming to you guys saying, yeah, it's gonna be another $10,000 a year just to keep the trails blown off. Like, that's all gonna be covered by the community organization that supports the trails.
So I kind of have a sort of question related to that. So I know you can't anticipate what that's going to look like until the time is here, but what do you guess possibly the impact could be to those neighbors that are surrounding that area in terms of that first phase of construction? So is that going to be, are they going to be dealing with things like, major equipment coming in, or have y'all anticipated what that's going to look like for that surrounding area?
Yeah, when it comes time to, when we've got some funding and it comes time to put out a request for proposals to build phase 1, as part of the proposals, contractors will be required to submit and work with the town on kind of their construction staging plans. When you're constructing single track trail or even a wider trail like that multi-use trail, you're using smaller low impact construction equipment. It's not like building a road where you bring a bulldozer in. You're bringing in small couple ton excavators. Of course, all the work will be done during the day, no night work like they do on road construction. So there would be some machinery in there, but it's generally low impact. The machines that we use to build trail with the Trailblazers, similar with what a contractor would use, and we pull those behind our standard pickup trucks on trailers, so they're not obtrusive machines.
Does the park close while those kind of things are going on? I'm just curious.
Yeah, there would definitely be some construction closures to make sure that folks weren't getting on a live construction site.
But we do have a desire to try to keep, and the phases are set aside in a way that we could probably keep some of the park open for use during construction. I mean, like you said, there's gonna be short-term closures for sure, especially getting in the initial access and things like that. But once they're back out of the entrance, hopefully we can open up kind of what's gonna be the blue hub, those existing trails there, and keep them usable.
In the plan that you submitted, this kind of goes back to the maintenance thing. Does the plan that you've recently submitted include a statement saying, we expect the Tar Heel Trailblazers organization will help maintain this over the years to come? And or could we consider something like that being added just so that we know? In my mind, I'm picturing the ramp.
Sure.
Ramps cost a little money, wood deteriorates over time. Heavy use on it might also do something. I don't know how much a ramp costs, but probably at least a few hundred, maybe a few $1,000s, maybe more, I don't know. But that's one thing. But I'm thinking of just the general trail maintenance that you were describing, just so that we know that we're not on the hook for a surprise bill. We've unintended consequences have come up with other things in the past as the city is working to bring fields and parks up to standards and things like that. And so 6 years from now, it would be nice if we weren't surprised with, oh, we've got to replace everything or something, and now we can't use it, or worst case scenario type stuff. But if we've got a plan, I feel like it would be a safer recommendation going to the city if we at least had that piece of things covered. And also to the funding, I believe earlier you mentioned that for phase 2 and 3, and I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Sarah.
Sarah. That the concept was that the city might foot something of a loan, or they would pay for phase 2 or 3, and that would be reimbursed potentially by the grants, the type of grants that you're going for, a reimbursement type of grant. Is that correct? And do we have some sort of outline of how that would work? I realize these aren't grants that we've won yet or anything like that, so it's.
I'd say, so you have two questions. One on the
Sure.
sustainability of trail. So the
I
estimate.
can answer that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Say this.
so we actually already have, in writing in a binding contract and agreement with the town to maintain the trails at Rocky Branch.
Okay.
And that's the MOU between the Tar Heel Trailblazers and the city of Belmont that's active right now. So that is what we have committed to do on the existing trails, maintain and do improvements. And that's also, the access that the town has granted the organization. So we've already got that maintenance agreement in place, and as long as that memorandum, stays in place, which there's no.
So would it be a new commitment to have a paragraph added saying, per the MOU, which could always be renegotiated some other time on the side or as needed or something like that? Per the MOU, the plan would say that the maintenance is covered basically, and then we'd be able to see it in our master plan and know that we've got this taken care of.
And I think, I mean, you asked a very practical question, like you build something out of wood at some point and need some repairs, and so you have, eyes on the ground looking at those things constantly, so they're small or incremental updates that are minor budget items for
Right.
Trailblazers. But there's also an opportunity on the front end of the plan, and I think our estimates take into account maybe more rock versus wood, so that you have something that has a longer life.
Would
And
last,
we
our
can
pavilion
work- yeah,
lasted 20 years, so.
Exactly, and then we can work, and knowing that that's a desire, hey, we either need to spread out this cost, or we want something that'll last longer, what fits within our budget, we can develop that. And then, to answer your question about funding going forward, and so if there is an ask, if we identify, here's the ask of the city, or we can just get over the last milestone for a phase at the city, or to make available X dollars from their budget, but the intent would be the city would not pay money until we have proof of funds. We have received a grant and we can move forward with a phase that then the money is being paid out through the city. So that's not coming from various organizations, and that it's still a City of Belmont park paid for through the city, but the funding is being given to the city. Does that answer your
Similar to
question? So
how-
it's not a fronted loan.
What-
So-
Okay.
Yeah.
How the tennis courts were.
Right, exactly, yeah. But what if you don't get to the grants?
And then we
Would
have.
you do phase 2 then and come back over to us and say, we need $65,000 when you get the grant?
The intent is to match the construction with the funding that's available, and if at the time it's like, we have this funding, or we have a gap, or if we say, is this available from the city? No, okay, we can pursue either
It
other
is a
grants,
plan at the end of
foundations,
the
or
day.
donations.
The master plan is just a
And-
plan. It's
and
just
I
a
guess,
plan.
yep.
It's not a promise of money.
And I
or
think
a
your other point of your
contract.
question was,
Right.
that's what we have phased out. We have looked at the entire grant cycle for the number of grants identified that were eligible. And layered in, when do we apply? What is the eligibility? Some of them, the eligibility, like Carolina Thread Trails, is only for the multi-use trail and not for a phase 3. But there's other specific trail funds that are available for that. And they might not come for another year and a half. So I do have a timeline laid out where it says, here's some projected funds, we have a high probability of being able to earn these funds, here's a reasonable dollar amount for, based on what our specific cost estimates are, what we would be asking, when would those be available, what phase can we complete. And from that, that's where we've identified, well, is there an ask from either corporate donations, other fundraising, or potentially the city? And I have some contingency funds in there that, as we've been discussing with others who are interested in this project, hey, my company offers a small grant of $5,000, I think we'd be eligible, let me ask. Hey, my company was willing to match a donation for something like this. So we've had some things come out of the woodwork that I've excluded from our dollars, but are kind of a contingency should any of these grants not come through as expected.
You guys have certainly done a great job. It's very good presentation. So I think before we can finalize, I think we're gonna go ahead and do public comment for this particular presentation, and then we'll, we have a list.
Anybody
Do we
wanna
have a
come
list
up?
set aside?
We didn't sign up, anybody want to come up?
Hello, my name is Bruce Schiller. I've been involved in the Belmont community since I've lived here. Moved here about 14 years ago. Been a trailblazer over 4 years, acting trail coordinator for Rocky Branch, and have been since the MOU was signed. Speaking now not as a trailblazer, but as an individual, and these are my opinions only. Originally got involved with Rocky Branch Trail in 2014 after my son heard Officer Hofstadter's plans to build a mountain bike trail here in Belmont. He decided to do his Eagle project at Rocky Branch. After hundreds of hours, he finished the 2 largest bridges in the park that set the foundation of the park to grow into what it is today for its efforts. He received a commendation from the city and left me to carry on his legacy. You can imagine my response when I found out the existing plan would redo one of these bridges and totally decommission another. The original mission and guiding purpose of the park, as approved by the City Council, was to provide a unique, technically challenging experience that was safe, fun, exciting for mountain bike users and other users alike. That would draw both local and visiting users to the park. From all the feedback that I've received, an increasing number of people, both locally and regionally, using the park, that mission was accomplished and continues on. Although I agree with the group's goals and appreciate the time and effort that they have put into this project, I don't agree with everything. First being the concept plan. Reluctance to look at, and that was the reluctance to look at other alternative plans. This plan, as shown, will effectively, in my opinion, gut the existing trail system, especially if funding dries up. Second, if all the options, I don't think all options have been explored or considered, and that's regarding the path and the cost issues of the plan. Third is the dismantling and undue criticism of the existing park to justify creating a new one. Obviously, that's a little personal there. If the plan is good, let it stand on its own merit. I believe that the group has begun to address these concerns, and I hope to stay around to make sure they hold true to their pledges. During the thousands of hours working at Rocky Branch, I've had the pleasure of meeting hundreds of users who are both young, old, experienced, and novice. And the overwhelming response from them has been thanks and gratitude for building a trail at Rocky Branch. I am here to give those riders and users a voice in trying to maintain the existing trail, features and feel of Rocky Branch that brought them here, but while also trying to implement the broader goals of this project. I believe that the RPB group, well, it was Will, but because it's supposed to be talking this before, provided a great presentation. They are an influential, talented, passionate group of people. I wish they were around when I first started this trail. It would have been great. I also know that the Trailblazers will continue to show their support for this project and Rocky Branch. And it pains me greatly not to be standing in 100% agreement with them at this time. But there also comes a time when I feel that your voice needs to be heard, no matter what the cost. My disapproval of this plan or the group's efforts is one of frustration for not giving me or the volunteers who helped build this trail, in my opinion, a true voice in the direction of this plan. I'd like to thank ZIP and the City of Belmont for their support and continued confidence in me as a trail coordinator. I'd like to thank the Trailblazers for their support and guidance in helping to create a well-liked, unique mountain bike experience here in Belmont. And the many volunteers who have assisted me, it is because of these volunteers that the trails are worth fighting for. I would especially like to thank all the users of the park who have expressed their appreciation and approval of the work that the volunteers and I have done at the park. That feedback is what made all those long, hard hours working in the woods the reason to continue working and the reason I'm here today. Thank you for allowing me to express my opinion. In all my wildest dreams, I had never imagined myself here under these conditions. I hope and believe Rocky Branch will continue to be one of the Belmont's true gems, and obviously, if, I'll be at your disposal if you have any questions. Thank you.
I've got a quick question.
Yes.
So I take it you've seen their plan.
Yes.
And so one of my questions is kind of where your perspective of their plan diverges a little bit. And I'm wondering even more specifically how you feel about each of the phases. Are you in alignment or not alignment with 1, 2, or 3, or all 3 together? And I hear what you're saying with the work that you've been a part of and its potential in doing if this plan is adopted. And I'm wondering, since I don't know the park as well as probably any of you in the room, where that, where the rubber hits the road, literally with
The
with
line-
different phases of the plan.
The lineup is the multi-use trail that is proposed, at least in this concept, is going through the middle of the park and will basically render any of those trails that are existing useless, because it will make it even more intersections and more, crazy. The problem is that that is the first part that you want to do, so therefore that is essentially the stop of the trail as it stands today. From my personal feeling, I feel that there's other routes that multi-use trail could go, that would be more effective and also allow for the existence of the existing trail to stay longer and therefore be able to be replaced and at a much slower rate as the trail eventually, starts to degrade or whatever, if that be the case. But it's just, and that's where the difference of opinion was I felt that multi-use trail would be the end of the trail as it is today.
And that, it sounds to me from what I've heard that multi-use trails come in partly for the funding that the Carolina Thread Trail provides and the goals to align the RVP park with the city's goals of connecting people via trails, which is our number 1 or 2 item for the whole city as a whole. But to your point, you feel that there's alternate paths?
Yes, I think there's an alternate path that goes along the southern border of the property that is, maybe it's not as visually pleasing because it's not along the creek, not the 200 feet that you get creek exposure that the current proposal would be. But I think that it would also provide a much, going on the southern border would be a easier cut, but that's from my personal, I have to defer a little bit to the professional trail builder that went in there. For his reasons, he picked that. I would look at, as I said, from my being out there, I would look at going on a southern route, which would allow less impact on the existing trails and would also allow less impact on the private property. If it was ever lost, you could actually still probably maintain that other trail, whereas the
is the southern trail actually within the park's boundaries as it is today, or is that more?
No, I'm talking about a new trail, basically a multi-use. If you want, I could, yeah.
I'm just trying to, so, I'm not sure if it's on here, but, so.
No, it wouldn't be on that, because that's the existing
Right, so-
park as it is now. But I'm talking about running the southern, apologize, would be basically coming in here and running along the southern border and then tying back in here. So the only part, and then.
So not the existing part of that trail?
No.
But, correct me if I'm wrong.
But not part of it. Yeah.
What, was that section though within the park?
Yes.
I think,
Yes,
there's.
yes, it is.
It is?
I mean, there is another, we'll say cowboy trail now
Right.
that's running outside the park, but this one would actually, there's enough room where you could actually pull that
Okay.
other trail in.
But to my understanding, the plan that was presented today is really a concept. It's not a firm plan that would be created once you have the architect or contractor, right? So there's still like room for some conversation here, but you're not asking us to approve a proposal for a map of what Rocky Branch should look like.
I can answer that, and that is correct, and that's something that, the project team has talked about throughout this process, and just to be clear, Bruce was a key member of this project team for all the months that we were putting this together, and was at every committee meeting that we had, as well as our presentation of the Trailblazers Board and the Trails Committee. So I just want to be clear that no one's been excluded from the process. The recommendations that we have in the plan were based on the professional contractor's assessment and to deliver the goals that the committee wanted to see with the project. the lines on the map are not flagged on the ground. There is a design phase that has to go on. Once a contractor's hired, and there's actually coordination that needs to go on with the Carolina Thread Trail Director to walk that alignment. The Thread Trail is very involved with the alignment of their trails, so Brett will come out, we'll walk it, and so there's absolutely going to be input on exactly where this stuff goes. And that's something that we've tried to make sure has been communicated this whole time.
Well, then do you think it makes more sense to actually get all that done first, before we give an approval and any of
Or
what?
does the city have to say that we want the thing such that the Carolina Thread Trail gets involved at all?
I think the city has to be able to say they support it, to be able to go after the funding, to then be able to do the design work.
You really
But
gonna
they
be
have a
voting on the
design
concept, you're voting on the concept, not the actual plans that have been drawn, because like you said, it's gonna be discussions on what that's gonna be developed.
The concept, I think, is just fine, and the phased approach, and then what that actually looks like on the ground is still
Still up in there.
valuable.
Right.
Now, everything that is in the plan is based on ground truthing. Craig spent many hours on the ground assessing the entire trail system. It's a 52-page document, and maybe 20 pages of it is the trail assessment. So there was a lot of in-field work done. The concept is viable as is, but there are, exact ground truthing measurements to be taken when the flag gets put down for where the trail is going to go. We think that the alignment and the concept is a great option for the Thread Trail, and we're really interested to see what the director of the Thread Trail thinks about that. We also think that it gives us an opportunity to reorganize some of the trail to create a better user experience. That was something that was noted in surveys, was noted in the trail assessment. So kind of failing to reorganize some of the existing trail would not achieve the goals that we all kind of set at the beginning.
So you're talking about like the natural of the trail, the kind of versus like an engineered trail, right? I mean, is that what?
No.
For the wrong words?
Yeah, yeah.
I thought it was pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to say thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts. I truly believe we wouldn't be sitting here today if it weren't for the work that you've done on Rocky Branch, and I'm sure if I was in your position and had my children out there building with me, I would feel just as emotionally invested. So, I can see the vision for Rocky Branch, but I just want you to know I personally appreciate you coming and sharing your comments and your passion for the project.
Thank you.
Is there some way that we can find a path to reconcile the bridges that you mentioned, that I believe you said your son built as part of his Eagle Scout? Is there, that's kind of a legacy kind of thing. And I'm wondering if there's some way that we can preserve that, incorporate that into the future, and maybe set that, it may not necessarily align with the goals, but part of anything like this is the...
I'm sure that it could.
I don't want to throw out a token here, but there's a legacy to starting a thing. And
I completely agree with that. And then basing the plan on the concept, we can work as the Trailblazers, Bruce as the TC, Will as the director of the trails, can work to preserve some of the most critical elements and to work with our team and the community to preserve some of those elements that are emotionally impactful and also kind of like, the groundwork for RBP, what it is today. So I definitely am on board for preserving some of those critical elements, and I think that working with the professional contractor, we could absolutely come into some sort of accord there.
And I don't know, I'd love to hear other concepts. This is not my part in that I didn't help build it. I've helped build trails and parks in other parts of the world, and I kind of know a little bit about how you get attached to a trail in Maine sometimes, or, you're just used to it. So the land starts to feel like it's part of you in that regards. You put your blood, sweat, and tears in, literally. But sometimes too, I've cut trails that went the wrong way.
Yep, I agree.
And so I don't know the path forward to making this work for everybody, but it seems like you all love it, and there's the
something
potential
we
there
all
to
agree
find
on.
a way there, especially as you guys are stewarding it towards potentially the thing that allows it to keep going at all. So, I don't know.
Bruce, thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for your time
Yeah.
and all your efforts. Is there anybody else from public?
Not fair to my speech, right? I'm Liz Soriano. I'm a resident of Belmont. I live in Eagle Park. One of the great things that I found in moving to Eagle Park was the trails. So we can access Carolina Thread Trail right there. That's amazing. And then we can go to Goat Island. Fantastic. So I tried running there. And I ended up having to, so I was running. I was like, oh, this is amazing. There's so many trails. You can see the train tracks, you can see the water. And then I got lost because there were so many diversions that I had no idea what it was. So I looked at my phone. I had my phone with me, thank God. But I found the closest road to walk to because it doesn't show any of the trails that are there already. And I found the closest road, and then I texted my husband. I was like, I don't know how to get out of here. Will you come pick me up? So I ended up on the other side of, it was close to Wilkinson. It was one of the streets that go off Wilkinson that he picked me up. And I had started at the EMS station on Eagle Road. So I think I love the trails that are there, but I haven't run them since, except if I just go right behind the school and stay on that main path. But if I divert, I'll get lost. And I would love to be able to use it all the time because we live right there, we walk there, my kids are there, and I also cannot mountain bike yet. I'm a terrible mountain biker, but I love it, and I would love more access to mountain biking, but the way the trails are now, they're way too hard. There's no way I can do it. And my kids want to too, but they can't do it right now because it's way too hard. So I think it's a fantastic idea to have a main trail going in where walkers, bikers, kids can go, strollers can go, and then deviate from that to have lots of opportunity for the advanced guys to do it as well. I think it's amazing. And property values will go up. Thank you.
Comment real quick. Go and try to choose now, because one of the comments in the assessment was signage and intersections, and we've addressed that and have reduced the intersections considerably. Have also put up new signage, new arrows, and I think it would be new maps, and I think it would be much clearer and easier to navigate through it now. So.
And be careful on the Stuart Kramer part of the trails, those are.
We didn't do that, that's Stuart Kramer.
Oh, by the way, my daughter used to run cross country, and she agrees with you guys, trailers.
My name's Phil, and my daughter Shelby's here. She actually learned how to ride her bike down there. But as far as the signage, and I'm going to go off of these two comments, the signage has improved a lot. And also another thing was getting lost. I mean, if you were dropped off in a neighborhood or unfamiliar town, you're going to get lost. You got to go back. You got to try it again. You find your way. You find shortcuts. You find other cuts that you're going to find just by familiarizing yourself with it, doing it over. But I use the trail 3 to 4 days a week. I love it. I obviously have an attachment to it too, so I don't want to see anything change. But I also had a question about the multi-use trail. I don't know who would be the best person to ask, but as far as the multi-use trail cutting basically through the middle, I would think that the multi-use trail would be the most high traffic trail there, especially being part of the thread trail. So you'd have a lot of, like you guys said, strollers, kids who just learned how to ride, walkers, runners. But it seems like you've got trails coming off and adjoining the multi-use trail to travel between, the phase 2, phase 3, and all these. So you're coming out into a trail on a mountain bike and, carrying speed, and you've got pedestrians running. And that just seemed like a danger to me. But the idea that Bruce brought up about using the southern edge of the property for the multi-use trail. I mean, if you're gonna put a multi-use trail in, I would think that that would be the safest, place to put it.
I might answer, my take on that, I think that's a really great point for Carolina Thread Trail. And I would say we've tried to minimize that to 3 points where that can be signed, and that a user of the Carolina Thread Trail, so you've got a walker or jogger going at a much lower speed, where you can identify there will be bikes crossing here as you do on other trails. Because I would say you have the same situation today where you have converging trails and mountain bikers heading at high speeds over, I mean, even if we've reduced from 60, I don't know if we're at like a dozen or 2 dozen intersections today where I think you would have a similar risk as well.
Also, a good designer would put together a trail when it comes back into the thread trail that slows the mountain biker speed down, so that when you get on the trail, and the trail is wide enough to have double track for passing. So I mean, I think what we're missing tonight is the designer and the trail builder on board that can resolve a lot of these issues and concerns.
And we see these intersections all the time. And the Whitewater Center has the most heavily trafficked trails around, and there's spur trails off of a main loop that goes around. And you're ripping through there. There's all kinds of users out there, bros with headphones in and jogging and strollers and all kinds of insane stuff that happens. And generally speaking, there's not too much of an impact. So I think that mountain bikers, especially if you're familiar with the trail, you kind of know where to modulate your speed. And there's plenty of opportunities to kind of do that safely.
And I would think the southern edge though would be the safest option. That's what I'm saying.
Then we have one more. I think this guy was on his.
We have a few more.
I gotta write it down so I'll get excited when we're shut up. So I'm speaking for myself, my wife who was here, and my daughter actually spoke for herself earlier. Hey, my name's Jay Jones. I live about 300 yards or so from RDP. I can see Phil's front porch from my front porch. And I know when anybody rides Rocky Branch because they ding as they go by my house. I've ridden Rocky Branch about twice a week for the last 3 years. I've done trail work at Rocky Branch a whole bunch of times. I've bled and sweated and scratched my head with Bruce on a whole bunch of days. I want to see Rocky Branch grow and be the best version of itself. I'm excited to continue to progress as a rider there. The last section, that black section, really excites me, mostly because I continuously hurt myself on a bike, and that seems like a place where I can put an end to that. But also a place where my wife and my daughter can go and walk, and my wife can run, and we can take a stroller or whatnot. It's a little too tight for that now, and then eventually I'd like to teach my daughter to ride a bike out there, and right now I can't think of a place where I could do that. But she can't reach the pedals yet, so we'll see what changes. And my wife just wanted to reiterate the same thing, that she's really excited for a place where she can safely enjoy the woods with the baby, with eventually the toddler, you know. And that's just our sport. I'm really excited about it.
I'll be brief because I know we're going long probably, but my name is Brian Paul. I'm the president of the Tar Heel Trailblazers, and you know, I consider Bruce a personal friend, so I don't stand here, you know, for the plan lightly. You know, because I definitely understand when you're out there building, you know, trails, it becomes personal, and you know, I built a lot of trail myself, and we've had this sort of conversation about other trails. We've looked at one at Fisher Farm, and it is personal for the people involved. But on the other hand, this is a conceptual document. The specific layout of those trails is not set in stone, and there's still conversation to be had about preserving some of those. And you know, so when we're asking you to, you know, promote the plans or approve the plan tonight, you know, it's just the general idea that you know, we kind of all want to agree on. Really, what this team has created here is pretty awesome. It's something that doesn't exist in this region, and would elevate Rocky Branch from, you know, something that's an attraction for a real small slice of mountain bikers and perhaps runners, to really a regional attraction that's going to bring people from all over the place. It opens it up to, you know, I have small kids, they've come and been on the pump track in the front, but I don't take them out into the trails just because, one, I don't know how to navigate them, two, but they're way over their difficulty level. with this thread trail, you know, the concept I've seen, you would be able to go from Belmont to Cramerton and eventually all the way up to Poston and Gastonia. That's a huge benefit for the community, not just riders, but runners and people for transportation, that sort of thing. You know, with the establishment of specific green zones where beginners can go and enjoy that, and the progression to the blue and black areas. This concept is you know, really above and beyond most things we've been able to establish in this area, and you guys just have a unique opportunity here that really with limited or no investment from the city, you can have an awesome park. So our board has reviewed it. We've also received the comments from Bruce as well, but we are excited about what this plan represents, and it has the Trailblazers' full support. So thank you.
My name is Alex Ramaza. I've been a resident here in Madison County since '96. I own a martial arts school in Dallas, North Carolina for the last 18 years. And this year I recently became a board member of the advisory board for the Parks and Rec here in Gaston County. I came to support this cause, this vision, because it's in line with a lot of what I'd like to say modern families are dealing with. My children primarily love to skateboard, snowboard, mountain bike, and on the weekends we love to go to travel to different places outside of Gaston County to get a lot of these experiences and thrills as a family. When I heard about the proposal and the people behind it, I really wanted to come and show my support. But after listening and hearing how you guys came together and put all these things together, I'm just blown away. I think you guys did a phenomenal job. It's in line with the vision of us creating these destination locations here in Gaston County. I think that you've definitely dotted your I's, crossed your T's, and worked together. Each of you were kind of like superheroes, brought your own superpowers and came together and just really blew me away with your presentation. To echo what he was saying, the president of the that just came up, I wholeheartedly agree. This is a unique opportunity for the growth and development of Belmont and the surrounding areas. And so I just wanted to just commend all of you for doing a phenomenal job and just show my support for this vision. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe go before my wife gets mad at me. So, for those that don't know me, I'm Chairman Carter. I've lived in Belmont since 2014. I have two small kids, 6 and 8, and I've been an avid mountain biker for about 3 or 4 years. First off, I want to say thank you to Bruce. I ride your trails once or twice a week. I used to run them before that. So I really appreciate all the work that you and the other volunteers have done out there. It's been really amazing. I think, you know, from my point of view, I'm in full support of the plan. I think we can argue with some of the tactics of where the trails go, and I would love to preserve as much of selfishly, the single hand-built Rudy single track that we have out there, because that's what I like to ride. However, you know, my wife's tried to get into mountain biking. My son's 8 years old, and where do I tell them to go? I said, you gotta go to the Whitewater Center. And where do we spend our money? Well, we have lunch at the Whitewater Center, and we have drinks there instead of coming back to Belmont. So I want to be able to ride from my house with my son and go out there and stay here in Belmont and spend my money here. So I'm looking forward to collaborating on how we can preserve as much as possible as well as execute on the vision. I want to thank the Tar Heel Trailblazers, everyone from the community that's put this together. I think it's really, really awesome. Looking forward to supporting it moving forward.
Can I ask a question on funding? So it sounds like once we do well, there's no cost to the city for phase 1. But it sounds like once we do that, we're pretty committed. So like, let's say worst case scenario, grants fall through phase 2 and 3. Is there a contingency plan? Because it sounds like the park would be pretty limited as far as like what you could do with it, as far if there's only that multi-use trail going through it. Like, would we be looking to the city for funding at that point, or like, I guess what's kind of the thought there?
I'll address that real quick, and I'd like to share, there's a lot of case studies, there's actually quite a few in North Carolina, developing similar mountain bike parks to this. One just happened last year in Hickory. The city of Hickory redeveloped their legacy trail system, not too unlike Rocky Branch Park, that had supported mountain biking for about 30 years there. And then a local group came together, wanted to improve the trails. They raised $120,000 at no cost to the city to completely redevelop the park. That's absolutely an option here. The ask, or any ask of funding from the city, is not the main direction that the Trailblazers would like to go. We think we can fund trail improvements here entirely from grants and community support like we've seen done elsewhere in North Carolina. We also believe, and I strongly believe, that we would not execute a first phase that would bifurcate the park and render pieces unusable. The multi-use trail goes through the middle as proposed. We would absolutely ensure that where that final alignment was, we knew how to tie the existing trails back to that multi-use path that we weren't going to tackle with a phase one. If you really look at the phasing, it's set up to create that green zone, the multi-use trail, and all the other trails that are on the other side. It would be a part of that scope of work to reconnect those so that nothing would be left in an unusable state. So if there was not any subsequent funding that came through, the park would be completely usable. The trails that are there today would be reconnected.
Yeah, because I just don't want us to get stuck in a situation where we've got, half a park bill, so, yeah, okay.
We got one more for public comment.
Hi. While you're coming up, can I ask a quick question? What, the title of this, plan, is it titled like a comprehensive master plan for Rocky Branch
Rocky
Park?
Branch Park Trail Enhancement Project.
Yeah, trail enhancement, okay.
Good evening, I am Haley Euler, and I don't think this is the way to improve Rocky Branch. As someone who has not only worked on the trails, but has ran the trails, I think there's no need to demolish what is unique and fun trails. Their plan, as they showed, is to demolish all the trails that my dad has worked so hard for, and I don't think that is right. I know that you said that you will not try to destroy them, but based on what I've seen with the plan, you do plan on doing that. If you wish to improve the trails, that is fine, but please don't destroy them. I know you said, I know you plan on enhancing the trails, but you actually plan on demolishing them. If not for the work that my dad has done on the trails, we wouldn't even be here talking about this. So please do not take down what my dad and my brother has built, because on the weekends when most of you were relaxing or hanging out with your family, my dad was in the woods, rain or shine, working on these trails. Sorry, talking from people in my spirit. He's been working on these trails, rain or shine. And yes, I do know that they need to be improved on, because there are some little hard patches, because I have read on them. I don't think that this plan, how they're set up, is going to improve it at all. It's just going to take down everything. And I don't think that is right. I think we should edit it, but not destroy it. So add and improve instead of demolishing and fixing, which will actually be cheaper. So I think that is my opinion. So, and also, they just mean a lot to how much work he's put into them, and I don't think it's fair just to destroy it for no reason, because they are perfect how they are, and I think the way to fix them would just be to improve on them instead of just taking it down. And my dad has a plan that will work, and I don't think how their plan is set up will actually do anything. And yes, thank you. That's what I was saying.
You mentioned Rocky too.
Oh yeah, my dog. We actually found my dog there. My brother was working on the trails. When he was working on the bridges, we found my dog Rocky, and we named her after the trail. So, yeah.
Right, so just a couple of things. Are we all in the understanding that the trail enhancement project for Rocky Branch Park is a living document, just as we've experienced through the comprehensive master plan? We use it as a guide, and there will be negotiations through it. Is that something that we can say is a fair statement as to when we're getting ready to make a motion to move this forward? Is it a room to say that this is in fact a living document that is negotiable, that when you guys get to that point, that you are working together to say, yes, we hear this, it may be best, the designer said, yes, it may be best to do that.
Yeah, and we've actually put that in writing in email discussions about amending the plan and actually using those exact words, a living document. As Bruce mentioned, he's been working to touch on some of the things that were identified in the initial assessment. That's kind of what we discussed, is as various improvements happen to the park, there's the ability to update pieces of the plan to reflect current conditions.
I feel like we've heard a lot. I think I'd like to motion that we approve, this very long title for this plan. Addendum to our Parks and Rec master plan and recommend to city council that they approve as well.
Okay. And copy there, or I'm going to include. Okay. All right, so, let me just clarify the motion then. The motion is to approve the trail enhancement project for Rocky Branch Park as an addendum to the Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Master Plan. And it is a living document.
Do we have to adopt the maps as part of the plan? Could we just adopt, like,
The plan?
the written part?
I think we have to adopt the concept.
Yeah, that the concept and the plans.
Okay.
Anytime we do anything, we can quickly make a change order, it's not gonna affect any money or anything like that, so.
Yeah.
That's.
That may be a similar question like what I asked, you know, do we need to approve the
Yeah.
first part since we're not funding it?
Yeah, I would just be
What's-
concerned that, like, if we say that we're approving it and the maps are part of that, it would look like we're also kind of signing off on the maps.
The maps would be a part of it, but like I said, you can easily do a change order once we get through the process, and that's what we're talking about.
But it would fall under an improvement that's not under a capital improvement project.
Well, there's that too.
Right.
Because right now, there's no money.
It will be added as a capital improvement project, but it's still, the
But
city
it's-
does not have to fund it.
Right, but it's
Right.
further down the road, so actually it's gonna fall in with no dollar figures at the
Right,
bottom. So
right
it's
now.
not-
Bumping
now.
anything.
Right.
And I thought it was already listed on what we had before in the unfunded portion.
No.
And what we met, when we met with city council was in the unfunded portion.
Yeah, it's on the unfunded bottom.
Yeah, it's on the unfunded bottom.
We
Right, so
accept
it's already
everything's
in there, yeah.
Yes, back here. Of the green.
Okay, I'm looking at, I'm probably looking at the older version of it.
Yeah, of the
Here, you
green.
want-
Sorry.
Yeah, it's on there.
yeah.
I think it's a 5-year.
Okay, yeah, trail development, okay. So it's already there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's 5-year.
And as you mentioned, this is, Ranch 250, but it's 5 years out. So what as we approve this, we're approving, the plan calls for accelerating it up to 2020 instead of 2028. This is the last half of the plan,
Yeah.
right?
But-
It's 250.
Yeah.
So we're pushing the plan up 8 to 9 years, or, well, it's a range of 25 to 29, so.
But I think that's with the assumption that they're able to raise the funds.
Right.
Don't have to.
Right.
Like on that whole timeline.
And
it's
seize the
completely-
opportunity to raise those funds
Yeah.
while,
Mhm.
where the opportunity is. I'm gonna second the motion, already put forth and encourage, everybody here to keep the document living and, you know, figure out with, with the Thread Trail folks as well, where the best place is for that. That trail, for me personally, the connectivity is one of my main goals with Gaston County, with Belmont in general. But I do recognize, your legacy and your family's legacy in particular with this, and I don't wanna see that lost personally, and I don't even know the trails. Whether or not that fits in with the plan or not, I don't know, and I have no authority in any of this, I'm just seconding the motion here because I wanna see connectivity.
Before we vote, I just got one thing to say. If we vote to move this up, we're setting precedents. That anybody could come along and with funds, with our master plan, they're gonna wanna move everything up. Okay, so it's.
If they bring funds.
If they bring the funds and they're providing the funds, then things are gonna move up. So I'm worried we're setting a precedence when we just voted on this.
And that concerns me.
And I've got a concern about it. It's there, can we pull it up a few years? Possibly, I mean, it's not gonna stop them from going forward with, phase one if there's no funding. It doesn't, but as they get into 2 or 3 where they're gonna need funding, I think we're gonna have to take it case by case at that particular time. But what I'm concerned of is, because it's gonna be all lumped together, and now we're gonna move the whole thing up. And I'm afraid it's gonna take, I think tennis courts is a great example, you know. Now that we've got public funding to help, and people see that, and we're moving forward with it, it's gonna set a precedence for other issues, other private interests that are funding something for Parks and Rec, they're gonna wanna get it moved up as well.
But how would it be different if we had a developer who came and was building Leeanna Park and this southern part of our peninsula, it's in our master plan. If a developer came and wanted to build that park as part of their development and was planning to fund it 100%, how would that be different?
How does it hurt to realize our plan
Yeah, and I would
sooner
like to
rather
say,
than later?
you know, for the time I spent on this board, which is, I don't even know how many years, but for 3 years, I watched the tennis court sit on the CIP, sit and sit, as they continue to get worse and worse and worse. And so, even when they moved from like number 20 to number 8 to number 3, and it still didn't get approved. And so, yes, then we take action, and when money's brought to the table and fundraising is helped, it does make a difference. So, in my thoughts, it's just like, if I happen to win the lottery tonight, and I say, City of Belmont, I wanna go build the gymnasium that we've needed, because it's been on the list for 25 years. I'm sure they will take the $8 million that we need from my lottery winnings, and it would be bumped up to the list. So I think that, you know, to me, it's like, it's one thing to sit back and say, we need this, but when people are willing to take action on that and go out and say, I believe in this so much that I'm gonna go out and raise money, I'm gonna apply for grants as a volunteer, I mean, I think that to me stands out, and I'm listening at that point and say, I feel good.
And I worry more about the precedent that it sets when you have this kind of support and work behind it, and we aren't taking that serious.
That's the kind of precedent that we want. We want people to go out and take our vision and make it happen. And we want people to create things here in Belmont so that the business happens in Belmont. And people, you know, I watched the city council case last night. We don't want people driving. I live North Belmont. I don't want more cars going to the Whitewater Center, because then they'll be, you know, blocking my way to the Whitewater Center.
Right. I'm not in disagreement with your point at all. It's just my concern that, Leanna, a lot of people don't know how long it took you to get that, how long it was on the capital improvement, or how long the new gym's on the capital improvement. All they know is we raised funds and it was done.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if it's this, then what's next?
Right.
And then what's next? And then we still have a plan we have to work through and prioritize.
But
So
then
it's
we
just,
have more money in our budget to be able to get further down the list.
we hope,
Yeah,
right? So
before
it's really based off, a lot of it's based off the grants.
But let me say, this is a process, and I'm glad as a person being here, I've been to several different cities, and this is the most effort I've seen from a community getting involved in doing projects. And these projects would not have been done if you guys wouldn't have stepped forward, like Leonard with the tennis courts. And everything, announced is going to be approved by city council. So this is just a process to bring to them to the table with all this information that we got to get them to change the decision in moving our projects from the high list or down list or whatever.
Well,
so just a
I
process.
guess.
This is, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was the funding for this is fairly prospective though, because like, I mean, with the situation with the lottery winning, like at least you've got a check in hand for that.
Right.
Whereas this, we're still kind of, I mean, we feel like we got a pretty good chance of getting the money, but it's still not, you know, I mean, if the bottom falls out of the economy tomorrow, I mean, where does that leave us?
Well,
And if we
where
don't
does
take the
that
money
leave
while
our
it's
whole
there,
master plan? That's what we said in our meeting with city council. If we hit another major recession, our whole master plan really is out the door.
Goes out the door.
So, and I think, to their point, no work happens until the money happens. So if the city isn't funding it, they can't fundraise the money that they needed, then none of the work will happen.
And going back to my Whitewater Center example, mountain bikers in general, they tend to have decent pockets. You guys have come up with $25,000 already. And I'm not saying that, you know, we expect you to fund everything out of pocket yourselves, but there's a lot of money that went in that Whitewater Center fueled off of dollars from mountain bikers. A whole lot of money. Now, some of that's, you know, the people on the water, but a lot of that is the people out there riding those trails. That's the majority, I'd say, who fills up that parking lot out there too. And I think push comes to shove, I can see this community doing something. And my big thing is, I'm sold as soon as you've got the trail going through. That helps connect Belmont that much more. Connects it into Stuart Kramer and Goat Island, which connects us to McCadville. That's just one big, you know, connection of dots. And I'm happy to see that happen. I'd like to see the trail go into a place where everybody's happy with it. I don't want to step on somebody's legacy or territory for that. But that's one of the main things that we came out, you know, that came out of our review of why we did the master plan and what the most important things were. And connectivity was a big one. And so this feels like a nice, easy win to me.
We already have first and second. Are you ready to vote? All right, so everybody in agreement with the motion? Approved. You might want to document against the agreement. Okay. All right, so let's move forward. It's approved. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.